In this video, I'm going to talk about how do you write a novel from multiple characters' point of view and what are some do's and don'ts to consider. Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm your developmental editor and your book coach, and I am also the creator of Her Narrative, where I help primarily women authors own their voice and unapologetically write the books that we need to see out in the world. So be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and let's dive right in. So multiple point of views is having a chapter or different sections of your book written from the perspective of different characters. So choosing to write from multiple points of view can be a very creative and fun endeavor, but it can also be a little bit of a structural challenge. So I hope this video is going to really help us gain a spotlight onto what it really takes to write multiple points of view. So when it's done really well, it can absolutely deepen the depth of our understanding of our characters and understanding of the story, and really just expand the emotional range that's coming through in the book. But you also need a lot of clarity and precision and thoughtfulness and really bringing some intention to why you are writing from multiple points of view so that it does not confuse the reader and it is very clear that there is purpose behind what you are doing. Without this intention, your book can start to feel a little bit frustrating to read, or it can be very confusing or just emotionally disconnected. So if you are considering multiple point of views, or maybe you've been diving into multiple point of views and you're not sure if it's working, let's talk about some things that you can do. So the first thing is to make sure that each point of view has a very clear purpose. So each point of view character needs to serve the story in a very distinct and meaningful way. So here are 3 questions that you can ask yourself to make sure that purpose is really clear. So the first is, what does this character know that all the others don't? Woo. The second question is, how does their perspective shape or complicate the central tension of the book? Or this could be the central theme of the book. So how does their perspective shape that and kind of complicate the central theme or tension of your book? And the third question is, what unique emotional arc is this character offering? So this is likely your main character is one of the perspectives in your book, and so you should have a very clear character arc and also understand what are the emotions that they're going to be experiencing throughout that journey. So another way to think about this is that if you could remove that point of view from your book, does your story still work? So if you are considering multiple points of view and you're not really sure, does this character add enough? Are they bringing that emotional depth? Then consider, if you were to remove it altogether, does your story still work? So if it does still work, then that might mean that that character's point of view is not actually adding to your story. So that's another great way to stress test if that point of view is really needed and helps elevate your story and doesn't just confuse or add pages for the sake of adding it. So another thing to do when you are considering multiple point of views is to make sure that each character has a very distinguished voice. So this is really important to make sure that when you are switching between each of the characters, that they have unique vocabulary, they have unique tone, cadence, rhythm to the way that they're speaking. We want each character to sound like who they are and not start to blend in with the other characters. So if the characters start to sound the same, then that shift in perspective loses its impact and it might as well have just been the main character telling the story the whole time. So something that could be really helpful is to take a paragraph or internal thoughts of each of your point of view characters and read them out loud. So can you tell who's speaking without actually having any indicators? So without saying that Carol said this or John said this, how can you tell that they are distinctly different and really hone in on that as you are writing from each of those perspectives? So another thing you want to make sure that you do with multiple points of view is make sure it's very clear to the reader that you are switching perspectives. So this means that you are being very clear and you're not just doing it in the middle of a scene and you're not doing it in the middle of a chapter, unless it's very clear that you're switching. Most books that have multiple points of view use the chapter break as a natural way to say, okay, now we're switching perspectives, and it usually has the character's name or some indicator at the top of that chapter that says, hey, we're now shifting into Carol's perspective, or we're shifting back to John's perspective. So making it very clear for the reader is going to make it easier for them to understand whose perspective they're reading, but also won't exhaust them or confuse them. So the last thing to do is to make sure that each character has a very clear arc. So sometimes if we do have our main character as a perspective, it can be really easy just to be very honed in on their character arc and forget about some of the other point of view characters. but you want to make sure that they all have character arcs that are developed and even have a little bit of overlap. Either they're complementing each other, or maybe they're creating that tension that's forcing both of them to grow. You want to make sure that everyone has a very clear arc and clear on how they interweave together and how they connect together as well. Okay, so let's talk about some things not to do when you have multiple points of view. So the first is you do not want to overwhelm readers with too many perspectives. So we do not want to have 10 different point of view characters in your book, because that is going to be exhausting and so confusing and a lot to track for the reader. As much as that could be really fun to think about, how does everyone have a perspective, it doesn't always work. So I like to keep it to 3 or less perspectives. I know some people go towards 4 or 5, and if that's really working for your story, then absolutely embrace it. But keeping it under 3, I think is really, or 3 or less, is really the key components there. Because again, you're going to make sure that each of them has a very unique voice. They're going to be memorable. We want them to be consistent throughout the book, and then having those emotional anchors. And how many perspectives do you need on one story to really make it effective? You want to make sure that you're staying really consistent with whose perspective you're sharing on that scene. It's okay if in the next chapter you are also sharing that character's their perspective on the scene or what they thought happened afterwards. That is absolutely okay, but you want to stick to that one character per scene so that, again, it's very clear when you make that transition to another character who's speaking. And the last thing not to do with multiple perspectives is you don't want to get stuck in this rehashing every single scene from every perspective. So if you are writing from 3 points of view, you don't need to necessarily go back to a lunch scene and share how everyone thought that lunch went or how they thought the conversation was going. We don't need to relive that scene 3 different times in your book. What can be really helpful is sharing that scene from one character's perspective, and then maybe the fallout of that scene is shared from the other character's perspective. So you want to make sure that as you are switching POVs, you are continuing to move forward through your plot and your character arcs. So that's what's really important, is you got to understand whose perspective you're sharing, what information they have that other characters don't have, and how that information can move the story forward. And then it's really looking at whose information do you need to know first, second, and third in order to make all the points of view come together along that plot arc and the character arc. So no big deal, right? This is why I have not been brave enough yet to write multiple perspectives, but I have worked with plenty of clients who are, and I love reading the books. It is a little bit of extra puzzle pieces that you need to work out as the writer. Totally doable and amazing, and they're wonderful books to read. So the great thing about writing multiple points of view is it does give you the ability to go even deeper, not only in your writing skills, but also into the human experience. We get to really connect on that emotional level through multiple perspectives to really understand the human nature more, human relationships, and that really gives stronger purpose to your book. And it really lets your characters' voices sing and thrive and be out in the front of those stories. So I hope you found this video helpful, and some do's and don'ts if you're considering or currently working on multiple points of views within your book or even memoir. This can work as well. So please comment below. Let me know, how many points of view do you have in your book? And again, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss any writing updates. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next video.